Chapter 10. The Flash of Defiance. The bustling shopping mall was alive with the hum of activity. Shoppers meandered through the aisles, their faces illuminated by the bright lights of various store displays. Among the myriad of advertisements, one display stood out prominently, a gleaming high-tech booth showcasing the Harmony Nexus implant, promising enhanced unity and compliance under the regime's watchful eye. Unbeknownst to the shoppers, a group of rebels was about to make their presence known. The Heart, having planned their operation meticulously, was ready for a daring intervention. As the clock struck noon, a sudden burst of energy erupted in the center of the mall. Basketballs began to appear out of seemingly nowhere, rolling into the open space with practiced precision. The Heart members, dressed in their trademark rebel gear, emerged from various corners of the mall. With a synchronized flair, they dribbled and passed the basketballs, creating a spectacle that quickly drew the attention of shoppers and mall security alike. Ellie, Marcus and the rest of the Heart were at the forefront of the operation. They moved with purpose, their actions perfectly coordinated. The target was clear, the Harmony Nexus display, which symbolized the regime's invasive control over its citizens. With a series of well-timed moves, the Heart converged on the display. Marcus, leading the charge, took a powerful shot with his basketball. The ball slammed into the display case, shattering the glass and sending pieces of the Harmony Nexus advertisement scattering across the floor. The display's high-tech screens flickered and went dark, the message of regime compliance now reduced to shattered fragments. Ellie watched in awe as the mall erupted into chaos. The shoppers' initial shock gave way to murmurs of confusion and curiosity. The mall security, caught off guard, scrambled to contain the situation, but the Heart had planned for this. Their intervention was not just about destruction, it was about delivering a message. Victor Hart stepped forward, a megaphone in hand. He climbed onto a nearby platform, using the height to address the crowd. His voice boomed through the megaphone, cutting through the ambient noise of the mall. "Attention, shoppers!" Victor's voice was firm and commanding. "You are witnessing a stand against the gyno-fascist regime's oppressive control. The Harmony Nexus implant is not a tool for unity. It is a means of surveillance and manipulation." Ellie, standing beside Marcus, could see the impact of Victor's words on the crowd. Shoppers stopped in their tracks, their faces showing a mix of fear and curiosity. The Heart's message was reaching them. Victor continued, his voice resonating with passion. "The regime wants to control your thoughts and actions, to strip away your individuality and freedom. But you have a choice. You can break free from their hypnotic spell and reclaim your autonomy." The crowd began to stir, some people exchanging worried glances, while others looked on with growing interest. The Heart's intervention was having an effect, stirring up a wave of dissent that could potentially spread beyond the mall. As the megaphone speech concluded, Victor urged the crowd to gather information, question the regime, and support the resistance. "Remember, the power to change the world lies in your hands. Do not let fear keep you from standing up for your rights." With that, the Heart's members began to disperse, their mission accomplished. The mall was left in a state of stunned disarray, the Harmony Nexus display in ruins and the shoppers left with a new perspective. Ellie and Marcus joined the rest of the Heart as they regrouped outside the mall. The adrenaline of their bold action was still coursing through them, but there was a shared sense of triumph and purpose. "That was incredible," Ellie said, her voice filled with exhilaration. "We really got through to them." Marcus grinned, his eyes alight with determination. "We made a statement, now it's up to them to decide whether they'll listen or ignore it." As the team prepared to leave, the intensity of the moment seemed to linger in the air. Marcus and Ellie found themselves standing slightly apart from the group, the excitement and shared victory between them creating a palpable connection. Ellie glanced at Marcus, her heart racing. The chaos of the mall seemed a world away as she looked into his eyes, seeing the same fierce determination and hope reflected back at her. There was a moment of silent understanding, the bond forged in their fight against the regime now reaching a new level of intimacy. Without another word, Marcus gently cupped Ellie's face in his hands. Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a release of the pent-up emotions they had both been feeling. It was a kiss that spoke of shared struggles, mutual respect, and the beginning of something deeper. As they finally pulled away, their foreheads resting together, Ellie could see the same resolve and affection in Marcus's eyes. The rebellion had brought them together, and in this moment, their connection was undeniable. The Heart's mission had been a success, but for Ellie and Marcus, it was also a turning point in their personal journey. The kiss was a promise of what they could achieve together, and a testament to the strength of their bond amidst the turmoil of their world. With renewed energy and a newfound closeness, Ellie and Marcus joined the rest of the Heart. They left the mall not just as rebels, but as partners in a fight for freedom, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 11: The Price of Defiance. The dawn light was barely breaking through the dense fog that shrouded the city when the regime's enforcers struck. It began with a pounding at Victor Hart's door, reverberating through the small apartment that had been his sanctuary and the beating heart of the rebellion. The small, narrow streets of the city were soon filled with the echoing sound of heavy boots and barking orders, creating a symphony of authoritarian control. The soldiers moved swiftly, their ranks a sea of black uniforms, pouring into every nook and cranny, leaving no stone unturned in their search for the infamous leader of the Heart. Victor had known this day might come, but he had hoped it would hold off a little longer. He had been meeting with other members of the Heart until late into the night, strategizing their next moves and analyzing the aftershocks of the protest at the mall. Now, as the officers broke down his door, he knew there was no time for escape. Two soldiers rushed in, their faces hidden behind visors, their batons at the ready. Victor stood in the center of the room, unarmed but defiant, his eyes locking onto the enforcers with a steely resolve. He refused to cower or flee, knowing that his arrest might inspire others to stand up against the regime. "You won't win," Victor stated calmly as they restrained his hands, his voice steady despite the chaos. The soldiers did not respond. Instead, they pulled him roughly through the narrow hallways, past walls plastered with resistance slogans, through the shattered doorframe, and into the waiting transport vehicle outside. As Victor was whisked away to the regime's prison, the city erupted into a massive sweep for basketballs. The sport, once a simple pastime, had become a symbol of rebellion, a beacon of hope for those daring enough to oppose the oppressive gyno-fascist regime. It was no longer just a game, it was a weapon, a defiance, and a sign that the heart of rebellion still beat strong. The regime had declared basketball illegal, labeling it an act of treason, and now their enforcers combed the streets with rubber detectors, rooting out any trace of the sport. They confiscated balls from playgrounds, tore down hoops, and even raided homes suspected of hiding the contraband. Across the city, teams of soldiers descended on community centers, schools, and parks, each tasked with destroying the rebellious game and erasing any hint of its influence. Bystanders watched in silence, a mix of fear and resentment etched on their faces as their cherished pastime was systematically eradicated. A message from Evelyn. As the regime's efforts to stamp out resistance intensified, Evelyn Grace took to the airwaves with a chilling announcement. Her visage was projected on every screen across the nation, her sharp eyes carrying a cold authority that demanded attention. "Citizens of the nation!" Evelyn's voice was icy and precise, resonating through the living rooms and public spaces where people gathered, her words echoing off the walls. Yesterday's blatant defiance against our principles has been met with the appropriate response. Victor Hart, leader of the subversive group known as the Heart, has been apprehended and will face justice. The broadcast shifted to a live feed of Victor in a grim, dimly lit prison cell, his eyes still burning with defiance. Evelyn's words continued, heavy with menace. "To ensure the safety and unity of our society, a public execution will be held. This will serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of challenging our great system." Ellie felt a shiver run through her as she watched the broadcast from the safety of her workplace. Her heart raced with fear, anger, and an urgent resolve. Victor's arrest and the upcoming execution were stark reminders of what was at stake and how high the costs had risen. She couldn't help but think about the previous night and the solidarity she had shared with her fellow rebels. Their cause had just become more dangerous, but also more necessary than ever. Rebel assembly. Back in the dimly lit warehouse that had become the Heart's refuge, the rebels gathered with somber determination. The room was filled with tense whispers and the scraping of chairs as they assembled around a large wooden table cluttered with maps, blueprints, and scattered basketballs. Ellie and Marcus, now thrust into leadership, stood at the forefront, their expressions grim but determined. The room buzzed with the low murmur of focused conversation, mixed with the nervous clinking of coffee mugs and the shuffling of feet. "The time for hesitation is over," Marcus began, his voice carrying the weight of their collective fears and hopes. Victor's arrest changes everything, but it doesn't change our mission. We need to act, and we need to act fast. Ellie nodded, stepping forward to address the assembled group. Our plan for the Grand Gyno-Fascist Gala remains the same, but we must adapt. Victor's sacrifice won't be in vain. We have the chance to deliver a powerful blow to the regime and disrupt the upcoming Harmony Nexus rollout. The gala venue. The Grand Gyno-Fascist Gala was more than just an event. It was a grand spectacle of regime power. The Imperial Zenith Hall, a towering edifice of opulence, stood like a fortress in the heart of the city. Its grand marble columns and gold-plated fixtures glittered in the artificial light, a symbol of the regime's unyielding authority. The hall's main ballroom was a labyrinth of luxury, adorned with the regime's emblem, an all-seeing eye encircled by twisting ivy. The space was immense, dominated by an enormous crystal chandelier that bathed everything in a harsh artificial brilliance. Every corner was monitored by surveillance cameras, and biometric checkpoints guarded every entrance. The security was formidable, a web of barriers designed to keep any dissenters out. The rebel team. Ellie and Marcus's plan relied on a diverse group of rebels, each with a unique skill crucial to their operation. Riley Locksmith Rhodes. Riley's eyes gleamed with the thrill of technology. Formerly a security systems expert, Riley was their key to bypassing the hall's defenses. Armed with an array of gadgets and a talent for locks, Riley was tasked with deactivating alarms and opening restricted doors. Maya Echo Thompson. Maya had a knack for becoming anyone she needed to be. A master of disguise and infiltration, she would blend in with the gala's guests, gather crucial information, and provide real-time updates. Her ability to mimic voices and alter her appearance made her an invaluable asset. Jasper Flash Turner. Jasper's muscular frame and quick reflexes were perfect for handling physical confrontations. A former athlete, Jasper's role was to create diversions and manage any unexpected chaos. His agility would be key in keeping their operations smooth and controlled. Nina Wires Patel. With a laptop as her weapon, Nina could slice through digital defenses. As the communications specialist, she would hack into the hall's systems to disrupt the regime's broadcast and send out the heart's message. Her technological prowess was crucial for overriding the regime's control. Sam Blaze Wilson. Sam's hands were steady and precise, even when dealing with explosives. His task was to set up controlled demolitions that would provide the necessary chaos and cover for their operation. Sam's expertise ensured that their plan would create impact without causing excessive harm. The plan. Gathered around a table covered in maps and blueprints of the Imperial Zenith Hall, Ellie and Marcus laid out their strategy. The room buzzed with anticipation, the low hum of discussions echoing through the space as rebels fine-tuned their roles in the operation. "We need to strike at the right moment," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the gravity of their mission. "Riley, you're on security systems. Maya, you'll get us inside unnoticed. Jasper, you'll handle the initial distraction to draw attention away from our main entry point." Nina, fingers flying over her laptop, looked up. "I'll take over their communications. Once I'm in, I'll disrupt their broadcast and make sure our message reaches the people." Sam's eyes were serious as he reviewed the explosive charges. "Controlled explosions will create the chaos we need. Precision is critical. Enough disruption to make an impact, but not so much as to cause unnecessary damage." Ellie took a deep breath, her gaze determined. "But there's one more thing we need to do. Evelyn Grace is the face of this regime, and we need to take her down." The room fell silent. Marcus nodded, understanding. "We've arranged a special gala of our own. During the chaos, we'll gain access to Evelyn's private chamber. There, we'll use our final weapon, a modified knitting needle, to lobotomize her, ending her reign and disrupting the regime's control." Riley pulled out the sleek, polished knitting needle, its metal surface glinting ominously in the dim light. "It's a tool of precision, re-engineered to serve as our means of liberation. If we can get close enough, this will neutralize Evelyn's influence permanently." Ellie's heart raced as she considered the implications. "This is our chance to turn the tide. If we can pull this off, we'll not only expose the regime's lies, but also deliver a blow to its leadership." The rebels exchanged glances, their resolve hardening. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and fraught with risk. But it was also their best shot at dismantling the oppressive regime and setting their society on a path toward freedom. Chapter 12, Fractures in the Iron Veil. The grand gyno-fascist gala was fast approaching, casting a long shadow over the nation. While the masses awaited the spectacle with anticipation, within the walls of power, a different storm was brewing, a storm fueled by ambition, deceit, and ancient prejudices that ran as deep as the regime's roots. The ivory tower in the heart of the city, nestled in the corridors of the imposing Ministry of Social Harmony, the true face of the regime began to show its fractures. The ministry, an austere structure of cold steel and polished marble, housed the most influential leaders of the gyno-fascist state. It was here that Evelyn Grace, the regime's formidable figurehead, held court. However, beneath her calm exterior, alliances were shifting and loyalties were tested. The ministry was divided into three primary factions: the Ivory Coalition, the Obsidian Order, and the Crimson Coterie. Each had its vision for the regime's future, each vying for dominance under the guise of unity. The Ivory Coalition. The Ivory Coalition prided itself on its intellectual and philosophical grounding. Predominantly composed of those who believed in the gyno-fascist ideals of a society based on intellectual elitism, they espoused a world where power was maintained through control over knowledge and the mind. They were the architects of the Harmony Nexus, viewing it as the ultimate tool to achieve societal perfection. Leading this faction was Dr. Helena Whitehall, a brilliant yet cold scientist who had dedicated her life to perfecting the Harmony Nexus technology. Her vision was clear: a society united in thought and purpose, where individuality was sacrificed for the greater good. Dr. Whitehall, with her silver hair pulled into a tight bun and her piercing blue eyes, stood at the helm of the coalition's meetings. Her influence was palpable, her speeches calculated and laced with a cold logic that masked her underlying ambition. The Harmony Nexus will usher in a new era of peace, she declared to her supporters, her voice unwavering. An era where conflict is eradicated, where dissent is nothing but a memory. Our society will be a beacon of harmony, led by the wisest mind. The Obsidian Order, in stark contrast, stood the Obsidian Order, a faction rooted in tradition and cultural supremacy. Comprised largely of those who believed in maintaining a hierarchy based on racial purity and dominance. They viewed the regime's recent technological advancements with skepticism and saw them as a threat to their established power. Lady Veronica Blackwood led the Obsidian Order. A shrewd politician with deep connections across the regime's military and social sectors, Lady Blackwood was a master at manipulation and strategy. Her raven black hair and sharp features exuded an aura of authority and control. She was ruthless in her pursuit of power, and she had little patience for the Ivory Coalition's vision of a homogenized society. The Harmony Nexus strips away our heritage, Lady Blackwood argued in a private council meeting, her voice rich with disdain. It threatens the very fabric of our identity. We must not become slaves to technology but rather preserve the natural order of leadership and loyalty. The Crimson Coterie. The third faction, the Crimson Coterie, was a smaller yet equally influential group known for its fierce independence and distinct cultural identity. Members of this faction were easily recognized by their fiery red hair and the traditional tartan patterns they wore as a sign of solidarity and heritage. They believed in a society that celebrated individuality and creative expression, standing in stark opposition to the Ivory Coalition's push for uniformity. Lady Siobhan McGregor, a charismatic leader with a mane of red hair and a voice that commanded attention, was at the forefront of the Crimson Coterie. Her presence was as striking as her beliefs were uncompromising. "Our culture is what makes us unique," Lady McGregor asserted in meetings, her voice filled with a passion that resonated with her followers. "We will not let the gala become a symbol of conformity and control. The people deserve to see our traditions celebrated, not overshadowed by sterile uniformity." The meeting of discord it was during a rare meeting of the regime's inner council, held in a grand chamber beneath the ministry, that the tensions between the factions came to a head. The room was a testament to opulence and power, with high ceilings and ornate carvings depicting the regime's rise to glory. The air was thick with anticipation and the subtle undercurrent of rivalry. Evelyn Grace sat at the head of the elongated table, flanked by her advisors, as representatives from all three factions faced off. The council's agenda was simple yet profound: to decide the regime's stance on the Harmony Nexus and the direction of the gala's message to the Dr. Whitehall opened the discussion with her characteristic precision. We stand on the precipice of greatness. The Harmony Nexus is not just a tool, it is the embodiment of our ideals. It is imperative that we present a united front at the gala, showcasing our commitment to progress. Her words were met with nods from the Ivory Coalition, but Lady Blackwood was quick to counter, her voice smooth yet edged with challenge. Progress is not defined by erasure, Doctor. Our society thrives on its diversity, its history. The gala should honor our past and preserve the hierarchy that has brought us to this point. Lady Siobhan McGregor, with her signature tartan scarf draped over her shoulder, was next to speak. The gala is an opportunity to showcase our cultural heritage. It should reflect the rich tapestry of our society, not be a canvas for technological tyranny. The room buzzed with murmurs, the council members glancing between the three leaders, sensing the brewing conflict. The factions were evenly matched, each possessing considerable influence and resources. Evelyn's eyes flickered with interest as she watched the exchange, her fingers steepled in contemplation. She knew that the regime's strength lay in its unity, yet the cracks were becoming more pronounced, threatening the foundation she had built her power upon. An uneasy alliance. As the debate raged on, it became clear that neither faction would yield. The gala was only days away, and a decision had to be reached. Evelyn, recognizing the potential for division to undermine her authority, intervened with a diplomatic proposal. "We cannot allow our differences to sow discord," Evelyn stated, her voice commanding the attention of the room. "The gala must embody the harmony we strive for. Let us choose a symbol that represents unity and diversity, something that all can rally behind." After much deliberation, Evelyn suggested a compromise, a black and white houndstooth pattern for the gala's decor. The stark contrast of black and white represented the balance between tradition and progress, a visual metaphor for the regime's ideals. The Ivory Coalition and Obsidian Order exchanged glances, a rare moment of agreement passing between them. They saw the potential in Evelyn's proposal, a symbol that could appease both their factions. But Lady McGregor of the Crimson Coterie was not convinced. "Houndstooth is an affront to our traditions," she declared, her voice unwavering. "We will not partake in a charade that erases our identity." With those words, Lady McGregor and the Crimson Coterie rose from their seats, their tartan attire swaying as they turned their backs on the council. They refused to support the decision, leaving the meeting in defiance, and declared they would not attend the gala, nor provide funding for its extravagance. A fractured victory. The sudden departure of the Crimson Coterie sent ripples of concern through the remaining factions. Their coffers, filled with gold and resources from their vast influence, were crucial to the gala's success. Without their financial backing, the event's future seemed uncertain. The Ivory Coalition and Obsidian Order quickly convened a private discussion, the urgency of the situation pushing them to find a solution. It was Lady Blackwood who proposed a bold idea, her strategic mind already formulating a plan to counter the setback. "We may have lost the Crimson Coterie's gold, but we have something far more valuable, the attention of the masses," she stated with a cunning smile. "Let's turn this gala into a pay-per-view event, a spectacle that the citizens must pay to witness. We can charge for access to the live broadcast, including the execution, ensuring that our coffers are filled without the need for the coterie's support." Dr. Whitehall, ever pragmatic, nodded in agreement. "A brilliant maneuver, Lady Blackwood. The allure of exclusivity will draw the public in, and the funds we raise will not only support the gala, but reinforce our control over the narrative." The council members nodded, the tension in the room giving way to a newfound sense of purpose. The decision was made, and the plan set in motion. The regime would charge for the privilege of viewing the gala and the live execution, transforming the event into both a display of power and a lucrative venture. As the council dispersed, Evelyn remained seated, her thoughts a whirlwind of calculations and contingencies. The gala would go on as planned, and with the pay-per-view strategy in place, the regime's financial worries would be alleviated. However, the fracture with the Crimson Coterie left a lingering question: could the regime truly maintain its unity in the face of such deep-seated divisions? The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the very foundations of gynofascism, as the grand gynofascist gala loomed ever closer, promising revelations that could shake the regime to its core. Chapter 13: The Highland Rebellion. The grand gynofascist gala was fast approaching, casting a long shadow over the nation. While the masses awaited the spectacle with anticipation, within the walls of power, A different storm was brewing, a storm fueled by ambition, deceit, and ancient prejudices that ran as deep as the regime's return to the highlands. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting the highlands in a golden hue, the crimson coterie returned to their ancestral lands. The highlands, with their rugged terrain and untamed beauty, stood in stark contrast to the sterile, oppressive atmosphere of the ministry. Here, amidst rolling hills and ancient stone formations, the air was crisp and filled with the scent of heather. The members of the Crimson Coterie rode their distinctive Highland ponies with a mixture of grace and determination. These ponies, known for their sturdy build and striking appearance, were as much a symbol of their identity as their tartan attire. Each pony was adorned with a brightly colored plaid saddle blanket, reflecting the vibrant patterns of their riders' kilts. The deep reds, forest greens, and midnight blues of the tartan clashed vividly with the earthy tones of the Highland landscape. The riders, Lady Siobhan MacGregor, Eamon Stewart, and Fiona MacLeod, moved with a purposeful rhythm, each riding side saddle with a fluid elegance. The side saddle style, traditionally associated with women of high status, was a nod to their heritage and an assertion of their identity. The ponies' steady trot was a testament to their training and the bond they shared with their riders. A deep discussion as they rode, Lady Siobhan led the conversation, her voice resonant with the authority of her leadership. "It's an affront to our traditions," she said, her gaze fixed on the distant peaks of the highlands. "The houndstooth pattern they've chosen for the gala is an insult to everything we stand for. It disregards our heritage and diminishes our cultural identity." Eamon Stewart, a burly man with a mane of fiery red hair, nodded in agreement, his face set in a grim expression. "The houndstooth pattern is a symbol of their homogenizing agenda. It's a pattern meant to erase our individuality, to flatten us into a uniform society where our tartan traditions are nothing but a relic of the past." Fiona MacLeod, her fingers deftly weaving yarn into a new piece of tartan cloth, added with a touch of bitterness, "And yet they continue to press forward with their vision of control. They care nothing for the rich history we represent, or the beauty of our diverse heritage. It's as if our entire culture is being sacrificed on the altar of their so-called progress." Knitting and conspiracy. The discussion was punctuated by the rhythmic clicking of knitting needles, each stitch a symbol of their defiance. The ponies' hooves made soft rhythmic sounds on the grassy slopes as the riders worked in tandem. The act of knitting itself became a metaphor for their resistance, a way to craft something beautiful and meaningful out of the chaos imposed by the regime. Lady Siobhan's gaze was fierce as she spoke, her hands moving with practiced ease. "We must act. The other factions have grown complacent, believing that their vision will prevail without consequence. But we will not let them erase who we are. We must make them pay for their betrayal of our principles." Eamon grunted in agreement. "We have the support of our people, and we have the means to fight back. We'll leverage our resources, our connections, and our passion. The gala will be our stage to make a statement that the Crimson Coterie will not be silenced or subjugated." Fiona's eyes sparkled with a mix of anger and determination. "We will sabotage their plans. We will show them that their houndstooth is not a symbol of unity but of oppression. And when the time comes, we will strike where it hurts the most." Caring for the ponies as twilight descended over the highlands, the Crimson Coterie arrived at their stables, a quaint barn nestled in a secluded glen. The barn, constructed of stone and timber, exuded a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Its sturdy doors and thatched roof had stood the test of time, much like the traditions the coterie held dear. Lady Siobhan dismounted gracefully, her side saddle style reflecting her noble bearing. She moved to her pony, a majestic Highland beast with a rich chestnut coat and a mane that flowed like a river of fire. With gentle hands she began brushing the pony's coat, her movements tender and practiced. Eamon Stewart and Fiona MacLeod followed suit, tending to their own ponies with equal care. Eamon's pony, a striking dapple grey with a silver mane, was brushed and fed with the same reverence Eamon had shown in their discussion. Fiona's pony, a dark bay with a forelock that fell over its eyes, received a thorough grooming and a freshly made haynet. The stable echoed with the soft sounds of the ponies munching on hay and the rhythmic brushing of their coats. The riders worked in silence for a while, their earlier conversation now a quiet background hum. The intimacy of the task, a shared ritual of care and bonding, offered a moment of peace amidst the storm of political turmoil. As they finished, Lady Siobhan gathered her companions in the center of the barn. Our ponies are our partners, our friends, and our symbols. They remind us of where we come from and what we fight for. Eamon nodded, his hands resting on his pony's back. They carry our history and our dreams. We owe them our loyalty and our gratitude. Fiona, still holding her pony's bridle, added with a touch of humor. And they've certainly earned their treats for the day. Let's make sure they're well fed and ready for tomorrow. A quiet moment with the ponies settled and content, the crimson coterie prepared to leave the barn. The sky had turned a deep indigo, studded with stars that glittered like diamonds. The cool night air was filled with the distant sounds of the highlands' rustling leaves, the occasional call of a nightbird, and the gentle murmur of a nearby stream. Lady Siobhan glanced back at the barn, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and resolve. We've done well today. Tomorrow, we continue our fight. Eamon and Fiona echoed her sentiment, their faces set with determination. The Crimson Coterie had found solace in their traditions and their land, and they knew that their fight was far from over. As they left the barn, the promise of their rebellion hung in the air, mingling with the crisp night breeze. They rode back to their lodgings, their ponies trotting steadily beneath them, their hearts resolute. The Highlands, with its ancient beauty and enduring spirit, would be their foundation, their sanctuary, and their battleground. And as the Crimson Coterie prepared for the challenges ahead, they did so with the knowledge that their legacy woven into every stitch of their tartan and every stride of their ponies would endure, no matter what the future held. Chapter 14. The Dawn of an Unlikely Alliance. The crisp morning air filled the Highland barn, where Lady Siobhan McGregor and the women of the Crimson Coterie tended to their ponies. The warm scent of hay and the rhythmic brushing of the ponies' thick coats created a serene atmosphere. Each woman moved with grace, her side-saddle riding attire still perfectly in place, even as they kneeled to care for their beloved ponies. The colors and patterns of their tartans were reflected in the plaid blankets draped over the ponies' backs, greens, reds, and deep blues mingling with the soft grays of the Highland ponies' manes. As they worked, the women exchanged quiet words of frustration, their voices hushed but tense. The affront of the houndstooth pattern chosen for the gala was still fresh in their minds, a symbol of how far gyno-fascism had strayed from its roots. Houndstooth, Lady Siobhan muttered, shaking her head as she ran a hand down the neck of her pony, Bridget. An insult to our heritage, a mockery of our identity. A murmur of agreement passed through the group as they continued their grooming. The ponies, sensing the tension, nickered softly, their large, intelligent eyes reflecting the unease of their caretakers. But as the women went about their tasks, they began to notice something strange. A faint sound, like the whisper of rubber against wood, echoed outside the barn. Lady Siobhan straightened, her hand tightening on the brush. What was that? Before anyone could answer, the barn doors creaked open. The women froze, eyes wide as figures appeared in the doorway, figures holding strange round objects. The Crimson Coterie backed away instinctively, their hands clutching their grooming tools as weapons. The ponies snorted and shifted nervously, their ears flicking back in response to the sudden tension. It was the Heart, the rebel group led by Marcus and Ellie. They stood there, basketballs in hand, surrounding the barn with a quiet but unmistakable presence. Lady Siobhan's heart pounded as she tried to make sense of the scene before her. What do you want? Lady Siobhan demanded, stepping forward to shield her companions and their ponies. Marcus raised a hand in a gesture of peace. We mean you no harm. We're here to propose an alliance. An alliance? Lady Siobhan's voice was laced with skepticism. With those things? She gestured to the basketballs, her tone dismissive. Ellie, standing beside Marcus, took a step forward. These things are more than they seem. They're a symbol of our rebellion, our fight against the regime. We know you're dissatisfied with the direction of gyno-fascism, and we believe we can help each other. The women of the Crimson Coterie exchanged uncertain glances. Their loyalty to their ponies and their Highland traditions ran deep, and the thought of joining forces with outsiders was unsettling. But the desperation in Ellie's eyes, the sincerity in her voice, gave them pause. Lady Siobhan studied Ellie for a long moment before nodding slowly. Very well, but if we're to consider this alliance, you'll need to prove yourselves. Marcus smiled, sensing a breakthrough. We'll do more than that. We'll teach you the game. Together, we can use it to our advantage. There was a moment of silence, heavy with anticipation. Then, with a determined nod, Lady Siobhan relented. "Show us." And so, the heart began to demonstrate the basics of basketball. The barn, once filled with the sounds of grooming, now echoed with the bounce of basketballs and the thud of feet against the dirt floor. The women of the Crimson Coterie, still hesitant, watched as the ball passed between hands, observing the fluid motion of the game. Ellie, sensing their interest, suggested, "Let's knit something together, a basketball net for the hoop." The idea was met with nods of approval. The women retrieved their knitting supplies, and soon the barn was alive with the rhythmic click of needles, the softness of yarn contrasting with the rough edges of rebellion. Together, they worked on the net, the repetitive motion of knitting calming their nerves as they listened to Marcus outline their plan for the gala. As the net took shape, so too did their resolve. They were no longer just caretakers of ponies and preservers of tradition. They were part of something bigger, something that could change the course of their world. And as the morning light filtered through the barn's windows, casting long shadows across the dirt floor, the bond between the heart and the Crimson Coterie was sealed, knit together, one stitch at a time. Chapter 15. The Invention of Horse Basketball. The sun had just risen over the Highland Hills, its warm rays cascading over the endless fields of heather and moss, bathing the landscape in a golden hue. The barn where the newly formed alliance gathered was nestled in a serene valley, framed by towering pines and the distant, jagged peaks of the mountains. Inside the barn, the tension of the previous day had melted away, replaced by a shared sense of purpose and unity. Outside, the Highland ponies, the pride of the Crimson Coterie, stood grazing peacefully. Their powerful muscular bodies gleamed in the sunlight, each muscle rippling beneath their glossy coats with every movement. Their manes, thick and flowing like cascades of silk, shimmered with shades of chestnut, grey and black, their beauty accentuated by the soft morning light. The ponies were a sight to behold, their regal posture and calm demeanour exuding both strength and grace. Lady Siobhan McGregor, her fiery red hair tied back with a tartan ribbon, stood beside her pony, Bridget, gently stroking the mare's neck. Bridget's mane flowed like a river of dark silk, and her deep brown eyes reflected the wisdom and loyalty that had been passed down through generations of Highland ponies. Lady Siobhan looked at Marcus and Ellie with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "We've learned your game of basketball," Lady Siobhan said, her voice carrying the musical lilt of the Highlands. "But we're Highlanders, we don't just stand and play, we ride. If we're to join forces, we need a game that honors our ponies and our way of life." Ellie, quick to adapt and always eager for a challenge, nodded in agreement. "Then let's combine them, basketball and riding. A game of skill, speed and precision, played on horseback." A murmur of approval rippled through the group, both rebels and Highlanders intrigued by the idea. The ponies, sensing the excitement in the air, lifted their heads, their ears pricking forward. The wind caught their manes, sending the silken strands dancing like banners in the breeze. "How would it work?" asked one of the younger women of the Crimson Coterie, her voice filled with eager anticipation as she patted her pony's strong neck. The pony, a dappled grey with a mane like silver thread, nickered softly, its muscles tensing in readiness. Marcus stepped forward, his mind already spinning with possibilities. "We'll keep the basics of basketball, dribbling, passing, shooting, but from horseback. The ponies will be our advantage, their speed and agility, adding a whole new layer to the game." Lady Siobhan nodded, her smile spreading as she glanced down at Bridget's powerful frame. "We'll need to adapt the rules though. Dribbling will be impossible while riding, and shooting will require precision." "We'll create a set of rules that work for both sides," Marcus agreed. "Let's start by setting up a course. The basket will be higher to account for the height of the ponies, and the court will be larger to allow for riding." With that, the group sprang into action. The Heart and the Crimson Coterie worked together, constructing a makeshift basketball hoop from a sturdy wooden post and the newly knit net. The hoop was raised high, towering over the ground, just within reach of a rider on horseback. The ponies, now fully alert, moved with grace and power as their riders mounted. Lady Siobhan, atop her beloved Bridget, led the way, her posture regal and confident as she sat side-saddle, a picture of Highland nobility. Ellie, mounted on a borrowed pony named Callian, marveled at the animal's strength beneath her. Callian's muscles rippled beneath his glossy chestnut coat, his mane a thick, wavy curtain that brushed against Ellie's arm as they moved. "Let's call it horse basketball," Ellie suggested, adjusting her grip on the reins as Kylene shifted his weight, ready to run. Lady Siobhan considered the name, then nodded in approval. A fitting name for a game that's bound to become legend. Marcus, holding the ball, grinned as he watched the ponies, their powerful bodies ready to spring into action. Let's give it a try. The first game of horse basketball began with Marcus tossing the ball to Ellie, who caught it with ease. The ponies, well-trained and agile, moved with a grace that took Ellie's breath away. As she guided Kylene across the makeshift court, she couldn't help but marvel at the pony's power and agility. His hooves thundered against the ground, each stride carrying them closer to the hoop. Ellie aimed for the basket, leaning back slightly as Kylene's muscular body propelled them forward. With a flick of her wrist, the ball soared through the air, arching perfectly into the net. A cheer went up from both groups, the thrill of the game already taking hold. Lady Siobhan and her companions, not to be outdone, quickly adapted to the new sport. Their ponies, bred for endurance and speed, darted across the field with astonishing swiftness, their manes streamed behind them like banners, their powerful haunches propelling them forward with each stride. Every pass, every shot was met with increasing enthusiasm, the women of the Crimson Coterie laughing and cheering as they mastered the game. It wasn't long before the ponies themselves seemed to catch the spirit of the game, their natural speed and intelligence shining as they weaved through the course, responding to every cue from their riders. Bridget, in particular, moved with a dancer's grace, her black mane flying as she carried Lady Siobhan across the field. The once somber barn now echoed with the sounds of competition and camaraderie, the unlikely alliance cemented by the creation of their new sport. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the game continued, the players experimenting with different strategies, laughing at their mistakes and celebrating their successes. Horse basketball was more than just a game, it was a symbol of their unity, a way to bridge the gap between the old world of the Highlands and the rebellious spirit of the heart. When the game finally ended, breathless and exhilarated, Lady Siobhan dismounted from Bridget, her smile wide and genuine. She stroked the mare's neck, her hand gliding through the silky strands of Bridget's mane. "I believe we've found our common ground," she said, reaching out to shake Marcus's hand. Marcus nodded, a glint of determination in his eyes as he looked at the magnificent ponies surrounding them. "Together, we'll bring down the regime." And as the ponies were led back to the barn for water and rest, the newly allied groups gathered around, discussing their next moves. Horse basketball had forged a bond between them, one that would carry them into the battles to come. The Highland ponies, with their strength, beauty and spirit, would lead them forward, their manes flying like banners of rebellion as they galloped into the fray. Chapter 16, The Machinery of Submission. Evelyn Grace stood on the observation deck of the massive production facility, her sharp eyes scanning the factory floor below. The entire expanse hummed with relentless energy as rows upon rows of workers, all of them young girls, toiled under the unyielding glare of overhead lights. The Harmony Nexus, her crowning achievement, was now in the final stages of mass production, but the cost of its creation was etched into the tired faces of those who assembled it. The factory was a vast industrial labyrinth, its walls cold and grey, devoid of any warmth or humanity. Conveyor belts snaked through the space, carrying components from one end to the other, where robotic arms deftly assembled the devices with unerring precision. The girls, some as young as 12, moved in perfect unison, their eyes dull and lifeless. Each of them had been implanted with a Harmony Nexus before being allowed onto the production floor, a prerequisite for service in the machinery of submission. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal and the relentless churning of machinery. The constant hum was punctuated by the occasional hiss of steam, the clang of metal on metal and the soft, rhythmic thud of footsteps as the girls marched from station to station. Their movements were mechanical, devoid of any will or agency, their minds shackled to the will of the state. Evelyn's voice rang out cold and cutting as she observed the scene below. "Behold the future," she sneered, her voice dripping with contemptuous satisfaction. "The Harmony Nexus will bring an end to the chaos of free thought, the disease of dissent, and the poison of individualism. No longer will the weak be allowed to stray from the path of absolute compliance." She turned away from the sight of the factory floor, her gaze sweeping across the vast expanse of monitors displaying live footage from every corner of the nation. The images flickered between scenes of bustling cities, rural villages, and even the most isolated outposts. Everywhere, the state's iron grip was tightening, its influence spreading like a virus. But there were still pockets of resistance, those stubborn few who clung to their misguided notions of freedom and autonomy. Her lip curled with disdain. "All resistance will be crushed," Evelyn continued, her voice rising with the force of her conviction. "The Harmony Nexus will strip away the last vestiges of free will, binding every citizen to the will of the state. Even the most mundane and inhospitable conditions will become bearable, no, desirable, to those who submit. Hunger, thirst, cold and heat, they will all fade into insignificance as the Harmony Nexus rewires the mind, silencing all discord, all discontent, all envy." She paused, her eyes narrowing as she watched a live feed of a re-education camp in the mountains. Rows of grey-clad prisoners were being marched into a featureless building, their expressions vacant, their steps mechanical. Inside, the inmates would be subjected to relentless conditioning, their minds scrubbed clean of any thoughts or memories that could fuel rebellion. Those who refused to comply would be left to languish in the harshest of environments, their wills slowly eroded until they begged for the relief of compliance. "Re-education will no longer require force," Evelyn mused, her voice softening to a menacing whisper. "The Harmony Nexus will make it a voluntary act. The people will flock to the camps, desperate for the peace that submission brings. They will embrace the most mundane and inhospitable conditions, grateful for the opportunity to be molded into perfect citizens. They will welcome the removal of their burdens, no more decisions, no more desires, no more thoughts to trouble them. Only harmony." As she spoke, her gaze fell upon one of the girls below, a young worker with matted hair and a gaunt face, her fingers moving with a practiced precision that belied the deadness in her eyes. Evelyn descended the stairs from the observation deck, her heels clicking ominously on the metal steps, until she stood before the girl. The worker did not look up, her focus entirely on the task at hand, as if she were nothing more than an extension of the machinery around her. "Tell me, child," Evelyn said, her tone mockingly gentle, "how do you find your work? Does it please you to be part of something greater than yourself?" The girl's response was slow, as if the words had to be dredged up from the depths of her numbed mind. "I am happy to serve," she murmured, her voice flat and devoid of any emotion. "The Harmony Nexus brings peace and purpose." Evelyn smiled, a cold, predatory grin. "Yes, it does, doesn't it? No more worries, no more burdens. Just the simple joy of obedience. Isn't that right?" "Yes," the girl echoed, her fingers never faltering in their task. "Obedience brings joy." The factory's oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on them both, but where the girl was trapped in a fog of submission, Evelyn reveled in it. She took a step closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Do you ever think, even for a moment, of what life was like before the Harmony Nexus? Before you were freed from the tyranny of choice?" The girl hesitated, a flicker of something, fear perhaps, crossing her face. I don't remember," she admitted, her voice trembling. It's better this way." "Of course it is," Evelyn purred, leaning in closer. "And soon, everyone will know the bliss of your compliance. We will rid the world of all discord, all discontent, all envy. The Harmony Nexus will bring us all together, in perfect unity. Isn't that what you want?" The girl nodded, the movement stiff and unnatural. "Yes, perfect unity." Evelyn straightened, satisfied with the girl's response. She turned away, her eyes once again sweeping over the factory floor. "Increase the output," she ordered, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. "We must ensure every citizen is equipped with a Harmony Nexus before the gala. There is no room for error." As she walked away, the girl's eyes followed her, vacant and expressionless. The hum of the factory continued unabated, the relentless churning of machinery a constant reminder of the power of submission. Evelyn allowed herself a rare smile. The Harmony Nexus was the key to her vision of a perfect society. A world where every soul was bound together in obedience, where all individuality was crushed beneath the weight of the state. In the depths of her heart, Evelyn knew that she had created something truly magnificent, and soon, the world would know it too. Chapter 17, The Order of Obsidian. The morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of Lady Veronica Blackwood's private office, casting a muted glow over the dark, opulent furnishings. A fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth doing little to chase away the cold, calculating atmosphere that pervaded the room. Lady Veronica, the formidable leader of the Obsidian Order, sat behind her massive ebony desk, her fingers steepled as she contemplated the message that had just arrived from Evelyn Grace. It was a directive, clear and uncompromising, as all orders from Evelyn were. The task was monumental, but Lady Veronica was no stranger to such demands. The Obsidian Order had long been the iron fist of the regime, enforcing the will of the genofascist state with ruthless efficiency. And now, it seemed, they were being called upon to take their mission to the next level. The Harmony Nexus was to be distributed en masse, not just in the controlled environment of the factory or the re-education camps, but directly to the homes of every citizen. The vision was chilling in its simplicity. Mobile medical vans, equipped with advanced robotic systems, would traverse the streets of every city and village, implanting the Harmony Nexus into the minds of the population, one household at a time. Lady Veronica's eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and anticipation. The Obsidian Order had always excelled in turning the regime's most ambitious plans into reality. This would be no different. With a decisive motion, she pressed a button on her desk, summoning her most trusted lieutenant. The door to the office swung open, and a young woman in a severe black uniform entered, her expression blank and her movements precise. Her name was Captain Elise Mercer, a rising star within the Obsidian Order, known for her unwavering loyalty and efficiency. "Captain Mercer," Lady Veronica began, her voice smooth and commanding, "we have been given a new mission, one that will require the full might of the Obsidian Order. We are to oversee the creation of mobile medical units that will implant the Harmony Nexus directly into the minds of every citizen. These vans will be the vehicles of our will, spreading harmony and compliance to every corner of the land." Captain Mercer nodded, her face betraying no emotion. "I understand, Lady Blackwood. The Obsidian Order will execute this mission with the utmost precision." "Good," Lady Veronica replied, her tone icy. "You will begin by assembling a team of our top engineers and medical specialists. They will design and build the vans, ensuring they are equipped with the latest robotic technology for the implantation process. Each van must be capable of performing hundreds of implantations per day, with no margin for error." She paused, her gaze intensifying. "And there is one more detail. The vans will be driven by girls from the School for Troubled Youth. These girls were implanted with an early version of the Harmony Nexus, an experiment that was, until now, deemed a failure. Their minds are already broken, conditioned to obey without question. They will be the perfect agents to guide these vehicles, ensuring that our mission proceeds without incident." Captain Mercer's eyes flickered with recognition. The girls of the School for Troubled Youth were a dark secret within the regime. A group of children taken from the streets, orphans and runaways, who had been subjected to the earliest trials of the Harmony Nexus. The initial implants had been crude, resulting in severe mental degradation, but the regime had kept them alive, if only to study the long-term effects. "It will be done, Lady Blackwood," Captain Mercer affirmed. "The girls will be prepared and ready to serve." "See that they are," Lady Veronica replied, her voice as sharp as a blade. "We cannot afford any mistakes. The success of this operation is critical to the future of our society. The people must be brought into harmony, whether they wish it or not." With that, Captain Mercer turned and left the room, her mind already racing with the logistics of the operation. Lady Veronica watched her go, a sense of satisfaction settling over her. The wheels were already in motion, and soon, the entire nation would be under the control of the Harmony Nexus. There would be no more resistance, no more disobedience, only unity, only harmony. The following weeks were a blur of activity, as the Obsidian Order set about their task with characteristic ruthlessness. The mobile medical vans were designed and constructed with terrifying efficiency, each one a sleek, black vehicle bristling with the latest in medical and robotic technology. Inside, the vans were sterile and cold, their interiors dominated by rows of robotic arms and surgical instruments, all programmed to perform the implantation of the Harmony Nexus with mechanical precision. Each van was equipped with a high-tech surgical bay, fitted with a series of robotic arms that could perform the implantation with gruesome efficiency. The procedure was horrific, designed to ensure maximum compliance and minimum resistance. The procedure began with a local anesthetic being injected directly into the scalp of the victim, who was strapped securely to the operating table. The robotic arms, guided by a series of algorithms and remote commands, would then make an incision along the top of the skull. The scalp was peeled back to expose the cranium, and a specialized drill was used to bore a small hole in the bone. With meticulous precision, the robotic arms inserted a long, thin probe into the exposed brain. The probe was equipped with a tiny Harmony Nexus device, which was then carefully embedded into the neural tissue. The device's microelectrodes interfaced with the brain's neural pathways, slowly and painfully rewiring the subject's cognitive processes. The implanting process was deeply invasive, as the probe inflicted considerable trauma to the brain tissue, ensuring that the device's signals would permeate every aspect of the subject's mental function. As the implantation continued, the subject's brain was flooded with a constant stream of the regime's indoctrinating signals. The pain and disorientation were extreme, but the subject's memories of the procedure would be erased. By the time the robotic arms withdrew, the incision was sealed with synthetic sutures and the area cleaned. The victim's resistance was crushed, their mind now a vessel for the regime's will. When the subject awoke, there was no recollection of the horrific procedure, only a state of profound, blissful compliance. The Harmony Nexus had effectively erased any memories of the ordeal, leaving the individual with a serene and untroubled acceptance of their new, obedient role within the society. Lady Veronica watched the process from a control room, her face impassive as the vans carried out their grim work. She observed the screens displaying the live feeds from the surgical bays, each one showing a different victim undergoing the procedure. The automated systems ensured that the process was carried out efficiently and without error, and Lady Veronica's satisfaction grew with each successful implantation. In the evening, Lady Veronica met with Captain Mercer and her team, discussing the progress of the operation. The room was filled with the low hum of machinery and the scent of antiseptic, as the last of the vans prepared for their nightly rounds. "Captain Mercer," Lady Veronica said, her voice cold and authoritative. "How goes the operation?" "It proceeds according to plan, Lady Blackwood," Captain Mercer replied. "The vans are fully operational, and the Harmony Nexus implants are being administered without issue. The initial results are promising. Compliance levels are increasing across the board." Lady Veronica nodded, a smile of satisfaction playing at the corners of her mouth. "Excellent. Continue to monitor the situation closely. We cannot afford any lapses. The people must be brought into harmony, and our control must be absolute." As the final vans rolled out into the night, Lady Veronica allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The regime's control over the nation was tightening, and the Harmony Nexus was the key to its success. The people would be made to submit, to conform, to embrace the regime's vision of unity and order. And with each passing day, the world moved closer to the perfect, harmonious society that Evelyn Grace had envisioned. For now, there was only the sound of engines fading into the distance, carrying with them the future of a world bound by submission, sealed in the iron grip of the Harmony Nexus. Chapter 18: The State of Affairs. In the weeks following the mass deployment of the Harmony Nexus and the widespread crackdown on rebellion, the situation in the gyno-fascist world had reached a critical juncture. Each key group involved had a distinct perspective on the current state of affairs, reflecting their positions and objectives within the novel's unfolding narrative. The gyno-fascist regime, Evelyn Grace, and the learned elders. Evelyn Grace, having overseen the implementation of the Harmony Nexus with ruthless efficiency, was now basking in the fruits of her labor. The regime had successfully implanted Harmony Nexus devices in 85% of the population, a staggering achievement that was swiftly turning the tides in their favor. The factories continued to churn out devices, their efficiency enhanced by the work of the young girls from the School for Troubled Youth, now fully integrated into the machinery of state control. The Harmony Nexus had a profound impact on society. Compliance was at an all-time high, with dissent all but eradicated. Citizens moved through their daily routines in a state of serene acceptance, their previous grievances and discontent dissolved under the influence of the device. Public protests had dwindled to negligible levels, and the atmosphere in the cities was one of eerie calm. In the regime's headquarters, Evelyn conducted her operations with a sense of cold satisfaction. Her monologues about the virtues of submission and the power of compliance-inducing technology had become a staple of state propaganda. The regime's grip on power was now stronger than ever, and the threat of rebellion seemed a distant memory. Lady Veronica Blackwood and the Obsidian Order. Lady Veronica Blackwood, head of the Obsidian Order, was pleased with the results of their latest initiative. The mobile medical vans, equipped with robotic systems for the implantation of the Harmony Nexus, had been a success. Over 50,000 Harmony Nexus devices were implanted in the first month of operation, with the vans covering every corner of the nation. The vans, driven by the girls from the School for Troubled Youth, were a testament to the regime's commitment to ensuring compliance. Each vehicle was a symbol of the regime's reach and control, a tangible reminder of the power held by those in charge. The vans' effectiveness was bolstered by their relentless deployment, ensuring that even the most remote areas were not left untouched. In her high-tech command center, Lady Veronica reviewed the daily reports, noting the decrease in resistance and the increase in compliance. Her plan had worked flawlessly, and the Obsidian Order's role in the regime's success was undeniable. However, she remained vigilant, knowing that even the smallest crack in their control could lead to unforeseen consequences. The Heart, Marcus and Ellie. The Heart, now a unified and effective rebellion group, faced a challenging reality. The regime's measures had significantly curtailed their activities. The number of basketballs apprehended during the recent purge had reached over 1,000, with many of their members forced into hiding. Despite their best efforts, their visibility and influence were diminished. Marcus and Ellie, now leading the rebellion, had managed to maintain a small but dedicated force. Their alliance with the Crimson Coterie had given them a temporary advantage, and their innovative game of horse basketball had provided a morale boost. However, their resources were stretched thin, and their operations were increasingly constrained. The Harmony Nexus's impact on the population was evident in the dwindling support for the rebellion. People who had once been sympathetic to the cause now appeared indifferent or outright hostile. The regime's propaganda and the device's influence had succeeded in quelling much of the dissent, leaving the Heart in a precarious position. The Crimson Coterie, Lady Siobhan McGregor, and her followers. The Crimson Coterie, having stormed out of the meeting regarding the gala's decor, had retreated to the Highlands. Their dissatisfaction with the regime's direction was profound, and they remained resolute in their opposition. The black and white houndstooth pattern chosen for the gala was an affront to their tartan sensibilities, and their refusal to participate was a testament to their rebellion against the regime's aesthetic choices. The Crimson Coterie had shifted their focus to bolstering their own power and resources. Their Highland ponies had become a symbol of their resistance, and their knitting circle had evolved into a clandestine planning hub. Despite their seclusion, they were still a force to be reckoned with, and their anger toward the regime's overreach provided them with a potent motivation. However, their impact was limited. They were cut off from the main political stage and faced challenges in coordinating with the Heart and other factions. Their decision to withhold funding for the gala had added financial strain to the regime's operations, but it had also led to an increased effort to capture and contain any remaining symbols of rebellion. Societal impact. The mass implantation of the Harmony Nexus had reshaped society. Compliance was no longer just a matter of law but a pervasive state of mind. Public spaces were filled with citizens who moved through their lives in a state of untroubled obedience. Dissent had been all but erased, and the regime's control was nearly absolute. In the days following the implantation, the atmosphere in the cities was one of eerie calm. The regime's propaganda machine worked tirelessly to reinforce the virtues of the Harmony Nexus and the benefits of submission to the state. The Harmony Nexus had achieved its goal of eliminating discord and discontent, but at the cost of individual freedom and autonomy. As the Grand Gyno-Fascist Gala approached, the stakes were higher than ever. The regime's plans for the event were set, and the world watched with bated breath as the final preparations unfolded. For the Heart and their allies, the battle was far from over. The resistance continued, driven by the hope of reclaiming their world from the clutches of oppressive control. Chapter 19. The Mystics' Council. The moon hung low over the pine woods, casting long, wavering shadows through the dense canopy. Lady Siobhan McGregor rode her Highland pony with practiced grace, the rhythmic clip-clop of the horse's hooves resonating in the silent forest. The night air was cool, and the scent of pine needles filled her senses, grounding her in the ancient rhythms of the land. The pony's thick manes, braided with care for the journey, seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. They navigated the winding forest paths with ease, their steps soft on the fallen leaves. Siobhan had come to this secluded place with a sense of urgency and reverence. She sought the counsel of an elder woman, a figure of great mystic power, whose knowledge and wisdom were said to transcend the boundaries of the mundane world. As they approached a clearing, the firelight flickered through the trees, guiding them toward their destination. The elder woman, draped in flowing robes of deep forest green and midnight blue, sat cross-legged beside a crackling fire. Her silver hair fell in loose waves around her, and her hands moved with fluid grace as she performed a ritual, her gestures accompanied by murmured incantations. Lady Siobhan dismounted and approached the fire with careful steps. The elder woman, her eyes glowing with an inner light, looked up with an enigmatic smile. Her gaze was sharp, as though she could see through to the very essence of those who sought her counsel. "Lady Siobhan," the elder said in a voice as smooth as velvet, "what brings you to my sacred grove on this night of mystery and power?" Siobhan took a deep breath, her eyes meeting the elder's with a mixture of respect and desperation. "Great elder, I come seeking your wisdom. The Harmony Nexus and the regime's plans for the Grand Gyno-Fascist Gala are upon us. Femine's control over the populace grows ever tighter, and our rebellion faces challenges we can barely comprehend." She reached into her saddlebag and produced a worn yet carefully maintained basketball. The sight of the ball seemed to bring a flicker of curiosity to the elder's eyes. "I have brought this," Siobhan said, placing the ball gently on the ground before the elder. "It is a symbol of our resistance and of the hope we hold against the regime's oppressive machinations. I seek your insight into our plight and the power of this object." The elder leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she inspected the basketball. Her fingers traced the surface, feeling the subtle textures and the weight of rebellion it carried. She muttered an incantation, and the air around them seemed to hum with a quiet, almost imperceptible energy. "This ball," the elder said softly, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge, "is more than a mere object. It embodies the spirit of resistance and the vitality of the human soul. It represents the joy of freedom and the defiance against oppression." She looked up at Siobhan with a gaze that seemed to pierce through the veil of time. "But be warned, Lady Siobhan, the patterns and symbols associated with this regime are cursed. The houndstooth pattern, in particular, has brought great tribulation and doom upon the three houses of gyno-fascism. It was chosen for its sinister ability to manipulate and deceive, casting shadows over the hearts of those who embrace it." Siobhan's eyes widened. "Cursed? How so?" The elder's expression grew somber. "The houndstooth pattern, though seemingly innocuous, has a long history of being associated with betrayal and discord. Its use in the regime's decor is no coincidence. It is a symbol of their intent to fracture and control. It brings a shadow of doom, spreading discontent and upheaval among those who are bound by it." She continued, her tone grave. "The three factions of the gyno-fascist regime have been ensnared by this pattern's malevolent influence. The Crimson Coterie, the Obsidian Order, and the remaining faction, each has felt the effects of this curse in their own way. Infighting, betrayal, and chaos are the fruits of their allegiance to this symbol." Siobhan nodded, absorbing the elder's words. "And what of Femine and their plans for the Grand Gyno-Fascist Gala? What must we do to counteract their schemes?" The elder's expression softened slightly. "The gala will be a display of their power and control, a celebration of their dominance over the populace. It is a crucial moment, one where their victory will be solidified unless met with counterforce. Your rebellion must harness the very essence of freedom embodied by this ball. Find unity in your cause, and let it inspire those around you." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The gala is more than a spectacle. It is a ritual of submission. To truly challenge them, you must be prepared to disrupt their plans at the heart of their celebration. Use the power of the basketball to ignite the flames of rebellion. Your strength lies in the spirit of defiance, not just the power of physical resistance." The elder suddenly turned her gaze toward Siobhan's Highland pony, which stood patiently by the edge of the clearing. The horse's dark eyes shone with an almost otherworldly light. The elder's eyes twinkled with mischief and reverence. "And what does our noble steed think of these matters?" the elder asked, her voice imbued with a sense of ancient wisdom. Siobhan looked at the elder, unsure of what to expect. The firelight danced over the pony's sleek coat, and as if in response to the question, the flames flickered and turned a brilliant, mesmerizing blue. The air grew heavy with a strange electric charge. The pony let out a soft whicker, and to Siobhan's astonishment, the horse spoke in a clear, resonant voice. The patterns of deceit and control cannot stifle the true spirit of freedom. The curse of houndstooth will falter against the unyielding strength of unity and hope. In every beat of resistance, in every act of defiance, there lies the power to break the chains of oppression. Siobhan's jaw dropped in awe, and she looked at the elder for confirmation. The elder merely nodded, her eyes filled with a knowing light. The wisdom of the horse is a reflection of the land's own heart. It speaks the truth of the spirit that binds us all. Heed its counsel well. As the fire's blue flames danced and shimmered, Lady Siobhan mounted her Highland pony once more. With a final glance at the elder, she felt a renewed sense of determination. The journey ahead would be perilous, but with the wisdom gained, and the unexpected guidance of the horse, she was ready to confront the challenges and triumphs that lay ahead. The ponies moved swiftly, their manes flowing in the moonlight, carrying Lady Siobhan toward the trials that awaited. The basketball was clutched tightly in her hands, a symbol of the rebellion's resolve, and the hope that would guide them through the darkest of times.